Hi, and welcome to Canterbury Cottage. Today's video is the second in an extreme basement makeover series. Last week, I made over the family room, and today I'll be tackling the bedroom my son will soon be moving into. I was raised that it's not polite to brag, but I have to say this room transformation is unbelievable, especially considering my extremely tight budget. I'll be sharing how much I spent, and I think you'll be shocked, unless of course you already know how extremely cheap I am. Well, let's get started with the before photos.
The bedroom is approximately 10 feet by 12 feet and has built-in cabinets along the left-hand wall. There is also a large carpeted cubby underneath the stairs. There is a 6-foot wide window along the back wall. The right-hand wall is bare except for a couple of hanging shelves. And the front wall has a pass-through window into the family room. The first thing I needed to do was prep the walls for paint. I removed the light switch and outlet plates, and I took down the shelves. I patched all of the holes with spackle. Then I applied a very pale aqua paint color to the walls. Check out my previous video when I made over the family room for my rationale for selecting this particular paint color. One way to make your wall covers look brand new is to pick up a package of new screws for just a couple dollars at the hardware store. Both the baseboards and the window trim were in rough shape. The window trim was full of staples that had to be removed before I could paint. To remain consistent with the wood trim in the family room, I painted the wood in the bedroom with the same black paint. I slid a metal paint guard underneath the baseboard to keep the paint off of the carpet. The vinyl flooring was removed and the carpet tiles were installed during last week's family room makeover. I also closed off the pass-through window in last week's video to create privacy for the bedroom. I used an inexpensive piece of hardboard and some inexpensive furring strips to add architectural interest. So now you could see the unattractive textured side of the hardboard on the bedroom side. So I decided to adhere cork to the hardboard. This would create a soundproofing effect as well as creating a functional bulletin board. I had picked up a roll of cork at a garage sale recently for $3, and I purchased a second roll at Menards for under $10. I used spray adhesive on the back of the cork, and it adhered to the hardboard easily. It probably wasn't necessary, but I added a few staples along the edges for good measure. Then I applied some grass cloth peel and stick wallpaper over the cork. This is the same wallpaper that I used on the wall behind the bookshelf in the family room. Due to its texture and pattern, it will easily hide thumbtack holes. I styled the shelf with a large tree print, but I'm sure my son will use it as a bulletin board. Well, that was one problem area solved. But now, what to do about those built-in cabinets, and especially that carpeted cubby? I began removing the carpet tiles from the walls and the ceiling. The wood slats in between removed easily, but the carpet tiles themselves were glued and not easy to pry off. It would have taken me hours to remove them all, so I decided to remove only the ones along the front of the cubby and just vacuum the other carpet tiles really well. Then I slid in a small wood dresser that I have owned for years and years. It was actually a perfect fit, but I needed to shave off the top edge on one side so that I could shift the dresser a bit to the left because the drawers on the right-hand side were bumping into the drywall. I cut a couple small pieces of scrap wood and wedged them in between the dresser and the wall on the right-hand side so that the dresser wouldn't shift around. And then I cut a furring strip to fill the gap in front of the dresser. To fill in the hole above the dresser, I cut a couple pieces of hardboard that I had left over from the pass-through window. I cut one piece to cover the ceiling area, and I used my nail gun to nail it in place. I covered the hardboard and the paneling with the same peel and stick grass cloth wallpaper that I had used on the bulletin board. I attached a furring strip to the paneling on each side of the dresser. I lined it up with the back edge of the dresser and nailed it in place using my nail gun. Then I inserted another piece of hardboard, pressing it up against the furring strips and nailing it in place. I cut a couple small strips of the wallpaper and adhered them over the seam between the two pieces of hardboard, and then applied the wallpaper to the remaining piece of hardboard. I added a furring strip along the back of the dresser and along the right-hand side to fill in the gaps between the dresser and the walls. Then I painted both the dresser and the built-in cabinets with the same black paint that I had used on the baseboards and trim. I had filled in most of the gaps with caulk before I started painting, but after the first coat, I noticed a few other areas that needed to be filled in. Caulk is the secret to getting a finished look when you are an amateur carpenter like me. I found some brushed gold handles on clearance at Menards for just $2 each, and I used a piece of painter's tape to make sure that I drilled the holes in the precise location that I wanted. I wanted to replace the silver knobs on the dresser with gold ones that I already had, but they had a very shiny finish, so I sprayed them just a bit with some vintage gold spray paint so that they would match the handles better. I still needed to figure out what to do with the open space underneath the built-in cabinets. So I decided to create some shoe storage using wood that I already had in my garage. So here is what I sketched out. This design would allow me to easily cut the wood with a circular saw and join the pieces together using wood glue and a nail gun. After I attached the two end pieces to the top piece, I measured the wood as I went along, knowing that if I cut everything beforehand, that I would run into problems. And it was the right decision because after I added all of the vertical pieces, the boxes were not all exactly the same size. So each horizontal piece was measured and cut to fit that exact box. Once it was completely assembled, I pushed it under the built-in cabinets, and luckily it was a perfect fit. Since I still had a lot of furring strip scraps left from the pass-through window project, I decided to cut some pieces to fit along the front edges of the shoe storage. This would dress up the cheap pine wood and make it look thicker than it actually was. I intentionally left the area under the dresser open so that all that storage area under the stairs could easily be accessed. I purchased some inexpensive storage baskets on Amazon and used 2 of them to fill in that opening. I still need to give the shoe storage area a second coat of black paint, but overall I'm very pleased with how this wall of built-ins turned out. I especially like the built-in dresser and the area above the dresser, which is the perfect place for a little mirror and some accessories. Before I painted the room, I took down the broken blinds, and I knew that I wanted to add curtains. I found an old curtain rod in my basement that I wasn't using, and I gave it a couple coats of black spray paint. I actually used wood brackets to hold the curtain rod because that was the only thing I could find in my basement that worked with the extra large curtain rod. I just used some old gray curtains that had once hung in my son's college apartment. The only light in the room was a single recessed light in the ceiling. So I purchased a recessed light converter so that I could install a traditional ceiling fixture. I'll be sure to link another video in the description box where I explain how easy it is to install this converter. It only takes about 10 minutes to install, and then you can attach any hardwired light fixture or pendant that you like. I attached a beaded light fixture that I found at the Amazon bins for just $1. Even with the price of the light converter factored in, I spent less than $20 total. You might remember that I updated a thrifted wall sconce in a previous video, and I decided to attach it over one of the nightstands next to the bed. There was no hardware on the back for attaching it to the wall, so I just drilled a couple holes, inserted some plastic plugs, and screwed it directly into those holes. I'll hang a small picture just below the sconce and above the nightstand to detract from the appearance of the cord. You might also remember a glass jar with leather hanging straps that I thrifted recently. I filled it with fairy lights and decided to hang it next to the window. I didn't have any hooks, but I did have a spare curtain bracket, and so I used that instead. The fairy lights also came from the Amazon bins, and they came with a multi-function remote control. Once I took the shelves down from the right-hand wall, it was looking pretty bare. I knew this would be the wall where the head of the bed would go, but the bed that I ordered did not come with a headboard. I originally thought that I would put the bed underneath the window, but unfortunately it didn't leave enough room between the bed and the built-in cabinets when it was arranged in that orientation. So to add interest to the headboard wall, I purchased a 1x4x12 piece of lumber. I stained it using the same stain that I had used on the furring strips in the pass-through window. I cut it to fit between the two walls, and then I cut that scrap of wood into 3 pieces for brackets to hold it. I attached 1 scrap of wood to each of the side walls and 1 scrap of wood in the center of the ledge. Once I had made sure that the ledge was level, I attached a few nails through the ledge and into the 3 pieces of wood. I'll probably make my son a headboard in the future, but for now, the ledge was an inexpensive and quick alternative. My son did have some furniture from his college days, but he needed a new nightstand, and I found a nice wood one at Goodwill for just $5. It just needed a little sanding and a fresh coat of paint. I spray painted it black to match the built-in cabinets and dresser. I added a thrifted lamp and some thrift store accessories that I had in my stash in the basement. I purchased this inexpensive bed from Amazon, which I'll have linked in my Amazon store, because my son had been sleeping on a mattress and box spring directly on the floor. It was very easy to assemble, as you can tell from the limited supplies that came with it. Here is a list of my expenses. I had hoped to stay under $300, and in fact, I only spent $205, excluding the cost of the bed. So I could have reached my goal if I had purchased a slightly less expensive bed. Be sure to stick around until the very end if you'd like to see the homeowner's reaction to the makeover.
I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you'd like to see another bedroom makeover, I'll be sure to link it in the closing slide. Now I'm off to get started on the small kitchen makeover. I'm still trying to decide what color to paint the kitchen cabinets, so I'd love to know what color you would like to see. Well, that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you next week. Bye-bye for now.
Wow, that looks so good. That's so nice. Oh. Wow, you already brought his shoes over? Oh, I haven't seen this. This is cool. I love it. It looks great.